Welcome to the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. This is episode number 44. Today I am talking about working less and living more life. Now let's dive in. Hey, welcome to episode 484. I'm your host, Taylor Bradford. Thank you so much for pressing play. Today, this episode is brought to you by Dubsado, which is my CRM and has been my CRM for over 5 years at this point, and is going to be something that I talk about in this particular episode as how to work less and live more life, which, all of the work-life balance conversations, I don't know that is ever really attainable if you're an entrepreneur, but you can get pretty darn close based on what I'm going to be talking about today. So if you are looking to take back more time and live more life, I'm going to highly encourage you to check into Dubsado. It allows me to send contracts. It allows me to get paid through invoicing. It allows me to do scheduling for appointments and so much more. I can set up workflows and tasks and to-dos, etc. Listeners of my show receive 20% off their first month or 20% off their first year of service. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado to take advantage of that offer. Okay, let's get into this week's social media headlines before we start into the nitty-gritty of the episode. Social media headline number 1, Meta, Snapchat, and TikTok are teaming up to address self-harm related content. The new program will expand efforts to combat harmful material. Social media headline number 2, TikTok adds delete and re-edit option for uploaded clips. A handy update for those who primarily capture and edit in the app. And that wraps up this week's social media headlines. So let's get into this week's topic. And I know that the conversation centered around or surrounded by work-life balance is talked about a lot, especially in the realm of being an entrepreneur. And like I mentioned earlier, I do feel like it's kind of elusive to actually find work-life balance, like true work-life balance as an entrepreneur when you're wearing most of the hats. Now, when I do think you can find kind of a happy medium is when you're able to add team members to help you, which is going to be something I am going to be talking about today. But ultimately, this is about working smarter and not harder in order to find more life to be lived and not work yourself to the bone. So I want you to be able to take steps back and go on vacation when you want to, and to take breaks when you need to, because of what I'm going to be talking about today. So it is all about how to live more life because you're working smarter, not harder. So what is this that I'm talking about? I'm talking about creating workflows, which I have talked about in the past on this podcast, but we're going to talk about it in a way where we are working smarter, not harder, so that we can find more time in our day or more time in our life to be living said lives. I feel like the moniker, you'll work 80 hours for yourself, but like working 40 for someone else totally sucks. I feel like we wear that as a badge of honor, that we would be happy to work 80 hours for ourselves. And while sometimes you might need to work 80 hours for yourself in order to get something going and off the ground, I don't know that it's a badge of honor. I feel like working for ourselves, we can easily smooth out those boundary lines so that we don't know how to live life. Our lives are being lived because we are business owners, and it's just like this fluid mix of the two, and there's not a definable, hey, there's the line. Okay, my life's over there and my business is over here. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we're in this hustle culture that encourages like blurring those lines. And at some point, you are going to have to redefine the boundary lines between life and work. And I'm saying that being an entrepreneur myself, and it doesn't, I don't want to say this is going to be like an easy thing to figure out, because you are going to have to put those boundaries in place. But I do think it is doable. I do think that it is important, especially from like a self-care standpoint. Like, why would it make a lick of sense to work yourself to the bone and to not enjoy the life you're building because you are an entrepreneur? Like, let's think about that for a moment. Why in the world are we even doing these things if we're not doing them to create a life we want to be living, right? So I think it's important, and I think it is something that we need to be selfish about, to redraw those lines and to define those lines. Work's over there, life is over here. Work's over there, life is over here. So I feel like this entire episode is about workflows and how they can transform your life. Yes, they will transform your business because it will make you more efficient, but in return, it is going to transform your life, and that is the goal of this episode. This episode is all about how to get more out of your existing life and the life you are building and working less. So creating workflows does allow you to work less and live more. And I know that most of us are looking for that, like that whole work-life balance thing again. So when I first started in entrepreneurial things, I had no clue about workflows. But I think intuitively, as you start doing things over and over and over, you're like, okay, how can I not do that over and over and over? And I really saw this with Sugar Creek, because I would get an inquiry and I would be basically responding with very similar information. And then I would put that person through the same process as another client. And I began to see the repetition that I was doing all of the time. And I was like, how in the world do I make this easier for myself? Which is when I started to create templates on the tasks that I was doing over and over and over again. So if you find yourself reinventing the wheel over and over and over again for like very similar tasks, it's time to actually take a step back and create these workflows, create templates for yourself that is going to make you more efficient and give you back some time. So for Sugar Creek, when a client reaches out through my inquiry form or submits a wish list, that then starts a workflow for me. So I will look through their wish list and look through their inquiry form. Both of it is giving me the information that I'm seeking from them. First of all, I'm trying to figure out, do they fall in the line of moving forward in my process, or do I need to send a "we may not be a great fit" email? And so once I determine whether or not they fall in line with that, like yesterday I received an inquiry and the person gets into like the description of where I'm trying to get more information about their event, and she pitches me to work for free. And so I already know that this is not going to be a good fit. So I will be triggering today, I will be triggering that email that this is not a good fit for us and best of luck on your journey. Because I get pitched all the time, and I choose to donate Sugar Creek for very important causes that are near and dear to me, which happened to be today randomly. And so I have already chosen what I'm going to be donating to in order to live up to the charity side of what matters to me. Anyways, that was a little tidbit. So that is going to trigger the workflow of this is not a great fit for us. Best of luck. And so on. So I slot them in based on that. If they have completed a wish list and it looks like that they agree to at least my minimum rental order, then it will trigger the next step in my workflow and a template that has already been written, which is whether or not they have chosen a phone consultation or an in-person warehouse visit. And so from that, I send a canned template email. I go in and adjust what needs to be adjusted based on their event date, their event location, and whether or not they are a bride or groom or parent or event planner. So I do adjust the language just a hair depending on who it is that has reached out to me. So all of that is templates, and it links to my scheduler, which then they get to choose a date that works for them that is also connected to my calendar and works for me. So there's not a lot of back and forth emails on figuring out what is the best option. Now, I know there are some sales teams out there that will be like, will one of these 3 dates work for you? And while I do think that there is some merit in that, that does trigger a lot of back and forth that I feel is unnecessary in Sugar Creek's business. And so I provide a calendar. It's showing, I think, a rolling 30 days. And they get to choose something that is close by right now and not somewhere far off in the future, because I realized early on that giving them somewhere way off in the future, they will usually find something else in between. Like if you cannot respond quickly and like get back in their inbox and start that conversation right away, especially as a commodity like Sugar Creek, even though I am very experienced based and that's how I drive my business, my client doesn't know that yet. And so it's very important for me to have these steps in place, these templates in place, so that I can quickly get back into their inbox. So templates will work for you for all the things that you do over and over and over. So you could have templates that are allowing you to answer simple client questions or to set up interviews or consultations. And like anything that you're doing over and over and over, you need a template for, not just for email responses. Like if there is a questionnaire, that needs to be in a template. If there is a scheduler, that needs to be templated somehow. And again, I'm going to plug Dubsado because Dubsado does all of these things for you. And again, 20% off for your first month or your first year. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado to take advantage of that. So with templates, you are now going to be able, even with a team, to still sound like you. So no matter who is sending out the canned response or sending out the questionnaire, you've already created it. It's already in your brand voice. So it doesn't matter who sends it out. It's going to sound like you. So you're probably wondering, how in the world do I even get started with this? You can go into your sent mail. And this will help you identify what you could turn into a template. Go into your sent mail, look at everything in the last 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, and see what you have sent over and over and over, or repetitively. Even if you've repeated it 2 times, I want you to consider creating a template for that thing. And ultimately, we're not in the business of dropping balls. We're in the business of being efficient, and having something that's already written without any pressure of a response is going to keep you on brand and make sure that your messaging is coming across exactly how you want it. Okay, number 2 in this whole how do we get more life out of our day-to-day and work less is going to be workflows. Now, this is going to take time to map out because a workflow is truly every step within a certain process. So when somebody reaches out to you, I want you to write down every possible step that could happen and create a workflow so that it literally flows seamlessly. This is what I like about Dubsado. You can create a workflow that if this happens, this triggers. If this happens, this triggers. If this happens, you need to do this. And it's so nice that you can turn the workflow in the moment that they come in and are a lead in your system so that you don't drop the ball and everything works seamlessly. So think about workflows as a checklist. So have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done that? If I go back into what it takes for me to get a Sugar Creek client booked, so they come in through my inquiry form or my wish list, and then I send a calendar invite through a templated email so that we can have a conversation about their event. I feel like this is a very important step in my business. It allows me to have a conversation with the potential client and them to hear me so that I can infuse Sugar Creek into their world right out of the gate. And I say that right out of the gate because their first experience with me is through my wish list creation and through my contact form. So that is a very curated process in and of itself because I'm looking to make sure this person is a hot lead for me. They're not a cold lead. They're not just price shopping me. They have to go through my process, and that is a very important step for me. So the workflow continues once I see them get scheduled into my calendar, whether it is a phone consultation or an in-person warehouse visit. If it's a phone consultation, I email them 2 days before that conversation to make sure I have the best phone number to reach them. Sometimes when people are filling out forms, they give inaccurate information, and I want to make sure that when I do call, that I have the right phone number to reach them at. Or maybe on our particular day that they are at work and need to be called by a different number than what they gave me in my form. So 2 days prior, I'm asking for the best phone number to use for our conversation. Now, if they are a warehouse client, if they are coming in to do an in-person consultation and to view my pieces in person, I send out an email a week before that says, hey, this is what we're gearing up to be doing. Here is the address. Here is the driving directions. I would love to know what is your favorite beverage. And I have that available when they show up for our consultation. It just makes things a little bit more warm and cozy and allows them to get a little bit of that Sugar Creek experience right out of the gate. And yes, I have had some wild requests for beverages, but I make sure to deliver with that kind of surprise and delight. They don't expect it, but I've got it for them. And because a lot of them will tell me oh, I love this if we're doing, drinks, or water is fine. And I will make sure to have that thing. And it is a warm and cozy moment and does help me close the sale. So when that particular client comes in for their consultation, I have candles burning and I have very particular scents burning that allow that experience to really get infused. And this is probably a crazy thing to say out loud. And some people have said so, or some people have been like, oh, I never thought about that. And I know I probably said it on the podcast in the past, but I have manly scents burning for my consultations, especially for my female clients, because it puts them at ease. I don't know what it is about manly scents, but it calms them down and basically allows them to spend more money, which is what I want, right? So the goal for me during either consultation, whether it's on the phone or through an in-person visit, is to get to know my client, get to know their event, and get to know what's important for them at their event, and then also what rentals they're on the hunt for. And so then I say, I will have a proposal for you within X amount of days, and I've gotten way better at understanding what's going into my life and what, expectation can I make sure that I meet when I deliver their proposal in a certain amount of time. And I found early on that giving myself a day or 2 days simply wasn't enough. So I do give myself kind of a week because I never know when my week is going to go off the rails. And I don't want a client waiting on me to give them something that I haven't delivered. And there have been some instances where, something prevented me from being able to, deliver a proposal in the timeline that I quoted, but I have reached out prior to that expiration timeline and just said, hey, this is what's going on. I will have it delivered to you by whatever. I try really hard to avoid that because that is not an email that I want to send, but sometimes it has happened. I mean, I've been in business almost 10 years, and sometimes life just happens. So that's basically the workflow. I don't do a whole lot of pressure sales just because I don't like that personally, and I don't think that that's an important narrative to be involved in the Sugar Creek experience. If you want a book, I know what your signals are to me, and I know whether or not you're going to be my client or you were just ultimately price shopping. And it's basically those that try to hurry up my process, and that's already a red flag for me. So I know it's probably not going to go anywhere, even though I'm doing all of this work. It's just part of business. So I try to fill out all of those signals ahead of time, but sometimes people fall through the cracks and I'm like, oh crap, that was a price shopper. So it happens, it does happen, but having a workflow in place, I know where my targets are and I know what my process is. So I think when you start looking at what your processes are day to day, and from the moment your client books to the moment you deliver the product or the service, all of that matters and all of that is a workflow. And I want you to do like yourself justice by sitting down and creating those steps. And literally, step 1, this is what happens. Step 2, this is what happens. Step 3, this is what happens. When you can actually see the steps that are involved, it will help you craft a more meaningful brand and experience with you and your business. The next step is to be okay with experimentation. And I say that because business isn't one size fits all, and what works for somebody won't work for somebody else. And you have to be okay with testing things out to see if they will work or if there's a more efficient way to do that thing. And I think you have to be like open-minded that something may not work for you and your business because you heard it works for somebody else. I think if we stay closed-minded and really stay in that square hole, round pegs like mindset, then we just do ourselves a disservice and we just keep spinning our wheels on the hamster wheel. So I think if you go at it as I am going to keep an open mind about how to simplify things, I'm going to test this thing out to see if I can create more simplicity or I can do this to streamline that process, I think you will allow yourself space to become more efficient because you are willing to experiment. There are times when I have launched things and I will get going and then I will be like, oh crap, that didn't work. And I will immediately pivot. I don't wait because I don't have time to wait. You need to be in the mindset of not having time to wait. If it doesn't work right away the way you intended it to work and there's not like a little nuance that you could change that would make it work, drop it like a hot cake and move on and try something else. I think sometimes we just get in like this headspace of, well, it works for so-and-so and I learned that tactic and why is it not working for me? Because you're not open to just dropping it and trying something else. So I think it's important that you allow yourself to experiment workflows and processes and templates because this is truly what makes you more efficient and allows you to take back time. So when you've got a gap, experiment with something, figure out if it's going to work, and then if it doesn't, pivot. It's okay to pivot. The next step in all of this is outsourcing, and you're not going to be able to do things by yourself forever. And you're going to have a team, and you're going to have to be okay with moving forward in doing that through outsourcing. And whether that is somebody in person with you or somebody virtually, it's going to be important that you figure out where you are losing time. And this goes back to figuring out workflows and figuring out where you've got hangups and where you're spending too much time. Where you're spending too much time, and getting caught in that nitty gritty and feeling like you're on the hamster wheel, that's the moment that you've got to outsource that thing, because you're wasting your time, where your time and your dollars, like if you look at your own ROI, you're not making any money. But if you were to hire it out and get back that amount of time, you could then put it towards a thing that you're really good at that you do make money from. So I think outsourcing can be very scary as an entrepreneur. When I decided to first have an assistant for Sugar Creek, but also to help support me in some of the other endeavors that I have, I was so scared to make that commitment. And now that I have, I don't know how I did it before. I just lost my assistant, and I actually didn't see it coming. So I now am down an assistant. I still have my bookkeeper, who also acts as one of my assistants and can step in and help me out. But having a dedicated assistant for Sugar Creek specifically, and for like my warehouse and keeping my warehouse client facing and like just clean and organized, like that's very important to my business. And I don't have that. And her last day was last Friday, and she really put me in a very tight spot because now I'm in busy season. And I was telling my husband last night, and I know I will find somebody. I feel like the right person will come along. Trying to hire somebody in my market and in my town, because they have to be around me because they're working in my warehouse, my location prevents me from having a larger kind of pool of people to reach out to. So it's really frustrating. And there are some job boards in my town that are on like Facebook, but it doesn't allow you to use links. So every time I have tried to post about my job, it denies the post. And it's so frustrating. So it tells me that whoever is moderating the group is only about themselves and what they're posting about, and not allowing anyone else in the community to post up. So I haven't figured out where's the best place. I have been posting it on Sugar Creek's channels, but a lot of the people following Sugar Creek are fellow vendors or my clients. And a lot of my clients aren't interested in a job. So it's really challenging. And I can see why I need an assistant so much. Like now, having had one, actually I've had two, and having had that person like follow through all of my workflows and follow through all the things that help me run Sugar Creek. We have a big event today, and I spent 4 hours yesterday with my other assistant prepping and loading for the event. Had I had an assistant, she would have already had all of that packed up and ready to go. And all we had to do is load it into the trailer. And so I had all of that back on my shoulders, which prevents me from actually doing the things that are going to make me more money. Like me prepping and pulling for an event is not making me any money. I've already made the money because I'm having the event, right? So like the prepping and the pulling is not something that I need to dedicate time for. So I'm really frustrated at this moment that I'm in this position, and I actually didn't see it coming. I probably should have, but anyways, here we are. So outsourcing is very important for you to continue forward in your business. You will not be able to do it all, and I want you to know that right now, if nobody's told you that, first of all. But second, I'm giving you permission to go out and outsource. And I know it could be really scary for you to make that investment in yourself, but I'm telling you to make that investment in yourself. You're going to need it, like ASAP. And it's the tasks that you either hate doing or the tasks that are taking way too much of your time that is preventing you from other ROI-driven tasks. The next one that I'm going to talk about is having a resource library. Especially once you have started to outsource, you want a hub of where everything is going to live for your business. And as you create a thing, it needs to go in the resource library. As you start to work on a launch, everything needs to sit in the resource library. As you develop new tools or systems or templates or whatever, it all needs to live in the resource library so that your team and you can get to things easily, so that there is not a bunch of emails going back and forth saying, hey, where is that thing that we did 5 months ago? Like, it all needs to live in a resource library. For Sugar Creek, our resource library really comes down to our Dropbox. It is where all of our galleries live, all of our content that we're creating lives through short form video, long form video, and then still images. That's what drives Sugar Creek. So that's kind of our resource library. Now, we do also use ClickUp to project manage behind the scenes. Now, this is more about keeping the warehouse organized, inventory management. It is where we know where everything lives in the building that is Sugar Creek. It's where I keep my build, repair, purchase list. It's where I keep where I'm getting low on supplies. It is the hub of everything Sugar Creek. So we use ClickUp for that, and then we use Dropbox to manage all of our media. And these are our resource libraries. ClickUp is also where I house all of my SOPs, my standard operating procedures, which I've already got in place so that when the next assistant comes in, right out of the gate, there is an instruction manual. So that's also something that you keep in your resource library, your standard operating procedures. And then finally, it comes down to your time and knowing where you're actually spending your time and being honest about how you are spending your time, because this is how you get more time back. Again, the whole goal of this entire episode is all about living more life and working less. And if you don't know how you're spending your time, how are you going to do that? So even if you were to create a resource library, even if you were to create workflows and templates and outsource, if you do not know how you are spending your time, none of this is going to matter. So do like lawyers do and bill every 15 minutes. And I say that because this is going to be a vast look at how you are spending your time. If you were to track your time for a solid business week, whatever that looks like for you, if that's Monday through Sunday or Monday through Friday or whatever your actual business schedule is, I want you to track your time so that you see where the gaps are, where you're spending too much time, and how you can get better at being more efficient and taking that time back. So do it like lawyers do. Track every 15 minutes, and you're going to be amazed at what you see. And it's going to be a real eye-opener and an honesty check for yourself, because you're going to see where you're wasting time. Whether that is having too many tabs open, which is totally me, or you're spending too much time in your inbox, or you are spending too much time, doing something that's a mundane task that you could just outsource. This is going to be an eye-opening thing. So tracking your time, spending a week doing it, a solid week doing it. I need you to say, yes, Taylor, I will spend a solid week tracking my time so that I can see where I am spending like the most time that's getting a return on my investment, or where I'm just wasting time. This will help you become more efficient and take back the time. So those are the things. So let's go back through them real quick. Number 1 is creating templates. Number 2 is creating and figuring out your workflows. Number 3 is experimenting. Number 4 is outsourcing. Number 5 is creating a resource library. And then finally, number 6, figuring out how you're spending your time. So I'm challenging you to do all of those things so that you work less and you live more life. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And until next time, I hope you have a great rest of this week.